Coaching in Session.
Your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins
Welcome,
here.
Craig Meriwether, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
Michael, I'm doing great. We've been planning this for a little bit, so I'm excited we finally get a chance to talk. I'm looking forward to where this discussion takes us.
The podcast is very interesting. I know people get upset sometimes when they have to wait a long time, but I mean, there's not many episodes that come out a year with the guests. I mean, there's only 50 to 100 guest episodes possible a year, and there's a waiting list of over 100 people. So it's difficult to kind of go through the people who would be good fits. One of the reasons why I wanted to have you on was because of your work. And it's so unique and it's interesting because it helps people not only with their subconscious mind, but the aspects of personal growth. And we're really big on personal development here in Coaching in Session. So if you could, can you give us a little bit of your background, how you got into your work and how you help people?
Sure. Basically, I'm a hypnotherapist, and I really appreciate your curiosity about this because you mentioned the word hypnosis or hypnotherapy, and a lot of people kind of back away really slowly because they think, due to what they've seen on movies or TV shows, what they've seen in Las Vegas comedy shows, is that it's a form of taking control over somebody when it's the exact opposite. It's a form of giving back control. A lot of people I work with, they're struggling with anxiety, they're struggling with anger. Maybe they've had trauma, recent trauma, maybe trauma that happened 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And you mentioned the subconscious mind. The reason hypnotherapy is such an extraordinary modality, extraordinary therapy to use is because it works with the subconscious mind. This is not talk therapy. Talk therapy is very useful, very helpful, very healing. But this is different because sometimes people find themselves spinning their wheels in talk therapy because they don't actually know what the problem is. And so they may be talking about something, well, this is what happened last week, this is what happened last year, this is what happened 5 years ago. But really the issue, ground zero origin issue happened when they were 5 years old. The subconscious mind knows that. The subconscious mind is here to protect you. We can go into that in a little bit. But in terms of what I do, I help people take back control. I don't fix anybody. Hypnotherapy in and of itself doesn't fix anybody. You fix yourself because you do know what the problem is. Yes, maybe it's behind the veil in that unconscious part of mind. But your subconscious mind, your unconscious part of mind is trying to protect you, keep you safe. Your subconscious mind is for survival. And it may be doing so with some not so resourceful or resilient instructions, maybe instructions set up by a child, which of course are not going to work when you're an adult. And so what's extraordinary about hypnotherapy is can access the subconscious, find those files in that filing cabinet of hurt and pain and heal them, resolve them, whatever needs to happen so you can go on to live your best life. The reason why I got into this is because I use hypnotherapy in my own life. Still am, but big into personal development, self-growth back in the 80s and early 90s when I started because I struggled a lot with anxiety and depression when I was a teenager. So we're talking about, 14, 15, 16 when it kind of started. And this is the 80s. So, of course, there's no internet, or at least no internet that, the public had access to. And there weren't even the medications, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, Prozacs, and things like that. Those didn't come out till the mid-90s, late 1990s. So in the 80s, really all you had was talk therapy or whatever book you could find at the bookstore or at the library. As a teenager, I wasn't anyway, inclined to do those things because I really didn't know any better. I just assumed that this is the way people felt. It's sort of like, how do you explain color to a blind person if you don't understand the language of joy and happiness and peace and calm? If you know anxiety and depression, and whether that's a genetic thing or mirrored in the home, my mom certainly struggled with depression and anxiety. And so whether it's got triggered in me through just watching her and being in that environment or a genetic thing that got triggered, I was struggling with it. And I really decided to kind of get my life going in the mid-90s. By then, Tony Robbins was coming out and being very popular and talking about this kind of stuff. And you were reading his books, Waking the Giant Within, and that led to other people. But it was really the birth of my son, where in the year 2000 that I really decided, I need to get my life together. Because again, if this is a genetic deal, then it's a good chance my son may have it. Or if it's a mirroring in the home, again, it's a good chance my son's going to struggle with it. And so I really started hit it heavy in terms of changing my life. And I'd kind of warmed up in the 90s, but by 2000, 2001, the internet's out there. At least in its beginning forms, the first few years. And we also had the reuptake, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors out there. So that actually broadened the conversation. It actually made it okay to talk about this stuff, because now you could just go to your general practitioner, just go to your doctor and say, I'm not feeling well, I'm feeling depressed, here's a prescription. So while maybe that's not the best way to resolve it, it's great for triage if you're really struggling. But in terms of resolving, that may not be the best thing, but at least it opened up the conversation. And with the internet there was a lots of information that you could tap into. And so what I was doing is I was finding every book I could read, every article, blog post, everything you could find. And oftentimes those blog posts, those articles, those books would have bullet points at the end, like here's how you can change your life, the 5 top things to change your life. And one of them was always hypnotherapy. The other 4 would be different. But one was always hypnotherapy. And after a while, after you start seeing hypnotherapy over and over again by these people that you are following, that you admire, you start thinking, well, maybe this is something to look into. I looked into it. I did some sessions, and the results were pretty extraordinary, to be able to release and drop that hurt and pain. Now, because of my general personality and maybe brain chemistry or things, I maintain and I manage. But I have the tools, and a lot of those tools are either linked to or directly connected to or are hypnotherapy practices or neurolinguistic programming practices, things like that, because they are so powerful. And so kind of as I got a bit older in life, in my mid 40s, I had the opportunity to make a big pivot in my life, a big change in my life. And I guess instead of buying a sports car in the typical midlife crisis fashion, I wanted to do something totally different. And I trained and studied to become a hypnotherapist, and been doing that work ever since. And so it's an extraordinary way to make like a career out of life, to help other people take back control of their own subconscious minds.
I have to say, you're the second hypnotherapist I had on the podcast. We have over 600, close to 700 episodes of the podcast today. And he was on episode like 100 and something. So this is definitely refreshing. And I have to say, the modality of therapy, hypnotherapy, is my favorite. So
Nice.
if I had to go for therapy, talk therapy is not it. It is not my cup of tea. I want to get deep. I want to get to the roots. I don't want to just talk about things. If it wasn't hypnotherapy, it would be a coach like David Goggins yelling at me and tell me, hey, you need to change, right? Both are a stark contrast, but I know what I need, right? Like some people can have the sugary approach and some people need the spicy approach. And I always say you have to do the work to figure out which is for you. And I think of like some of the greats, right? Like basketball players like Michael Jordan and things like that, right? He had Phil Jackson, he had Tim Grover, right? Those people helped him become Michael Jordan, because if Michael Jordan was just trying to do Michael Jordan by himself, there's no doubt he would have been great. But those two amplified him to go and move so much quicker to that greatness. And he had that fire, right? Very, very similar to Kobe, right? The Black Mamba mentality. And Kobe, even in interviews when they talked about his rival, the only rival Kobe ever had was Michael. And he would say it again and again. He would say, the only rival I would ever had or have retired. And he was talking about Michael Jordan. It wasn't LeBron James. It wasn't everyone else, because he knew something was on the inside. It's that fire, right? Very similar to the subconscious, where it's like something is either bringing you up or bringing you down. And when we talk about the subconscious, you brought up so many wonderful points where you talked about survival, right? The subconscious is sometimes there to help keep you survive. And I wanted to just kind of give you a verses where if we had to look at the subconscious mind for survival, is it survival or sabotage?
Oh, okay. That's an extraordinary question. Your subconscious mind is for you. It's for the life of the body, the mind, the consciousness. It wants to keep you alive. It's computer code, though. So what may seem like sabotage, that it's against you, is actually a form of protection. Now, again, it may not seem like that, but the main job of the subconscious mind is to keep you alive, is protection, survival, and it's working off what it's experienced in the past. Sort of like, nowadays everybody's talking about AI, and AI is learning through the experiences that it has in the past. So same, our subconscious mind is very similar. It's learning from what we experienced in the past. If, however, what you've experienced in the past is pain and hurt, it's going to want to avoid those things. If doing something new and risky causes pain, it's not going to want to do that. The subconscious mind is for your survival, for your protection, not your happiness and success. You may be happy, you may be very successful, but that is due to training your subconscious mind to go after those kind of things. One of the aspects of subconscious mind certainly is running your immune system, running your digestive system, growing our hair, splitting our cells, taking a one-day-old baby to being an adult, all things we don't have to think about, thank God. Beating our heart, breathing our lungs. Another aspect of the subconscious mind is those habits that we have of tying our shoes and zipping up our jacket and, driving a car, riding a bicycle, walking. These are all things, again, we don't have to think about. When you walk down the street, you don't have to think left foot, right foot, left foot, don't fall over, don't walk backwards. You just do it. So your subconscious mind is holding on to that. But again, the main task of your subconscious mind is survival. And one of the ways it does this is by having that filing cabinet, a decent analogy, and all the files of all the experiences you've had that have been painful, hurtful, that have caused anxiety or fear or anger or trauma or embarrassment or humiliation, they're filed away. And as we bring in all the information through our five senses during our day, what we hear, see, taste, touch, and smell, we're bringing in all that information. It's being filtered through that filing cabinet. If anything triggers one of those files, we get the warning signals. Now, when you pull a fire alarm in the building, the sirens go off, the strobe lights go off, warning everybody if there's danger, you need to get to safety. Well, we also have a warning system, but the warning system is feelings. The feeling state of anxiety, the feeling state of fear, the feeling state of anger, overwhelm, worry, warning you that there's danger in your external environment. One of the big issues, though, of being human is that the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. Something you've been talking about for 600 episodes. The mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. This can be a good thing. This can be a not so good thing. But an example of this is having a nightmare in the middle of the night. It doesn't matter how crazy, how ridiculous, how stupid that nightmare is. Your mind thinks you're under attack. So maybe a cheeseburger's chasing you down the street throwing coconuts at you. It's dumb. It's never going to happen. Your mind thinks you're threatened, and you're under attack. So it'll turn on that armor. Even in deep sleep, it'll turn on the stress response. This is not a very elegant way of running the body or a very resourceful way of running it. It's hard work. Your brain has to start creating all that adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline. I've heard the crazy stories of grandmothers lifting cars off of babies. That's adrenaline doing that. The 300% more blood moving to big muscles of your arms to fight, 300% more blood moving big muscles to escape. It's got to come from somewhere. So it's turning down the power on your immune system, turning on the power of your digestive system, all while you're in sleep, all because you're being chased by a cheeseburger. So you can imagine what's happening in your waking world. So that's the subconscious mind. It's this highly emotionalized mind meant to keep you safe, meant to keep you protected. And if it sees a threat, imagines a threat, it'll turn on that stress response. Another aspect of being human, though, is what you practice, you get better at. We know this from playing piano, learning the guitar, dance, learning martial arts, learning to walk as a kid, learning to ride a bicycle. What you practice, you get better at. So what if you're practicing anxiety? What if you're practicing fear? What if you're practicing anger? Is that not going to become an automatic habit, literally wiring that state into your brain, resetting your nervous system so it becomes an automatic habit? That's the subconscious mind. The conscious mind, that's the logical mind, the analytical mind, the mind that creates our goals, the plans to achieve those goals, the willpower. But what neuroscientists are telling us is that conscious mind only makes up 5% of mind. Subconscious mind makes up 95% of mind. So when there's conflict between the logical mind and the emotional mind wins every time. And so that's where a lot of the work you talk about, Michael, the work that I'm sure your listeners are doing, is to start training that conscious mind to respond in a more resourceful, resilient way. And the way you do that is having to heal those files in the filing cabinet. Maybe you can do it all in 2 or 3 sessions. Maybe they need to be taken one at a time. It depends on what the person has gone through. But you're allowed to do that. And this may seem a little rough, what I'm about to say, and this isn't to blame the victim or say it's anybody's fault, especially as if this happened as a child. But you're the one who put those files in that filing cabinet. Again, it's not to say it was your fault. It shouldn't have happened. It wasn't fair. It was probably done unconsciously, probably when you were a child. But you're the one who put those files in there. So that means you can become empowered by taking them out. It's your filing cabinet. You're the one who put them in there. It becomes very empowering because now you can take them out. It's up to you. Again, sometimes we don't know what those files are. Maybe they were set up by a child. Maybe the best thing you could have done as a child is to remain small, to hide, to keep your voice low and weak. Maybe that's the best thing you do to be safe growing up. That's not going to work when you're an adult. But if you haven't changed the instructions, if you haven't dealt with those files, so to speak, why would anything change? And that's why we were talking a little bit. And again, I don't want to knock talk therapy. I'm not anti-talk therapy, but I think it's like what we were talking about a little before. You tend to spin your wheels sometimes. You're there for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, a year, 2 years, and you're still talking about the same thing. Extraordinary about hypnotherapy and maybe what you've experienced, Michael, and some of the other listeners is that you can go in, you can access those files. It doesn't take months and years. You're allowed to access those files. It's your subconscious mind. It's your mind, your brain, your consciousness. And you're allowed, you have the power, you have the right, you have the ability to create change. It does take some effort. It doesn't take a lot of effort, but it does take effort and does take a little bit of work. In terms of the healing sessions, now here's a whole nother conversation, maybe a whole nother episode. It's like what you practice, you get better at. So yes, there's a healing work you can do in a hypnotherapy session and deal with those hurt, that pain, those instructions that may be behind the veil of the unconscious mind. But then what are you going to practice? Once you get it, you want happiness, you want joy. Just because you get rid of the anxiety or the hurt and the pain or the anger doesn't mean all of a sudden you're filled with joy. There's practice around that. And there's a certain relentlessness to this work, as you know. You just got to keep practicing. Like our physical health. You don't get to go to a personal trainer once and work out at the gym twice and you're in shape for 50 years, eating pizza, drinking soda. You have to continually work on your physical health. We know this. You have to continually work on your physical health, go into workout, whatever it is for you, dance classes, spin classes, whatever, CrossFit, gym. You got to do something at least 3-4 times a week, if not every day. Take the stairs to the elevator, eat right, drink right. We know this for all of your life. But that also goes for your mental health and your emotional health, your spiritual health. There's a relentlessness to it. You just got to keep going and going. If you can have all the joy and happiness you want, but it may take some practice to wire that into your brain, to reset your nervous system. The Dalai Lama, head of the Tibetan Buddhist spiritual community, he still meditates every day. The guy's 90 years old. And if you think if there was anybody to have it down by now, you think it'd be the Dalai Lama. Like if anybody had to just kick their feet back at 40 and say, well, now that's it. I'm enlightened and I don't have to do anything. It'd be the Dalai Lama. But read his books. He talks about the anger and the sorrow and despair of, what's going on in Tibet, let alone the rest of the world. But, the Chinese government still bulldozing down his monastery to build roads and railroad tracks and to, they're arresting his monks, torturing his monks. That's got to cause extraordinary anger, extraordinary despair. He's probably going to die without having ever been able to go back to Tibet. He's exiled out of there in 1956, 1957, something like that. That's got to cause extraordinary despair and sorrow, but he doesn't want that to be who he is. So every day he meditates, and that's his work. But he meditates. He does loving kindness and compassion meditation. And again, if anybody doesn't have it down by now, you think it would be that guy. He doesn't have a lot of the life challenges the rest of us do. He's not married. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a small business dealing with taxes and all the economic stuff going on. And he has a staff of people to meet his every need and want. But he's still there doing the work. Still there training. And so it's like 2 parts to this work. The healing work which is hypnotherapy is very, very great at. Doing that healing work in a safe and gentle way, but in a rather, accelerated way, if you will. I want to say it takes, so many sessions here and there, but generally I work with people 4 or 5 times, and generally I tell people that this is going to take, 3, 4, 5 sessions, depending on what people want to work on. And generally I tell them that, I work with people more, 8, 9 sessions, whatever, maybe just 1 or 2. But generally I tell them because I want them to know that this isn't going to be 80, 90 sessions over 2 years. Your subconscious mind, you get to take control of it. And you get to heal what it is you need to heal, even if you don't know what that is. Have send people an intake form when we do session. Generally, most of my sessions are over Zoom, like something not unlike this. And send people an intake form they fill out online, and some people write 8 very detailed paragraphs of what they want to work on. Other people might write 1 word, anxiety. All right, and that's what we work on. We work on anxiety. You know what that means. I maybe specifically don't, but I'm not here to fix anybody. I'm here to diagnose anybody. I'm not here to prescribe anybody, analyze anybody. You want to work on anxiety, then that's what we work on, because you know what that means. And technically, you know where that's coming from, because it's your body shifting over into that fight or flight stress response, creating the feeling state of anxiety. You're doing it for a reason. And your subconscious mind knows what that reason is. And so that's why the healing can happen relatively in a safe, gentle, and somewhat quick way.
I love all that. I think of when we have our children and they're growing up. Back in I guess it's 2000s, they came out with the part 1 of Inside Out was talking about emotions.
Yeah.
And they have Inside Out too, I believe now. And I don't know if they're doing a 3, but the idea for Inside Out was to introduce more emotions for children to understand and to have them accept them, right? And that's definitely a good thing, right? We want them to understand their emotions. We want them to be able to control their emotions. But we can fast forward, right, 15 years, and we can see them as teenagers, right, 18, 19, and then even as young adults in their early 20s. And we can see just how much stress they have. Even though they know all these emotions, even though they know how to talk about them, one of the things that I believe many teens need some assistance with is asking for help, right? Like if something is wrong, they feel as if they have to figure it out from themselves, right? Maybe they get bad advice from Google or from their friends or something along those lines, but they give themselves this mindset of they have to figure it out themselves. And when we look at like how we can help a growing mind, a young teen, a young adult, an adult today, what would that conversation be to allow them to open up, to get help sooner, rather than waiting for them to hit a wall where they're so anxious where they can't even get up, or they're so stressed and they can't even move, or they're so filled with fear they don't know how or to be confident, right? Like we can look at all the alternatives, and many people, when they get that deep, it feels as if they can't get out. So, what would that conversation be to say, hey, if you're starting to feel something, or, even at an early age, like how can we start to instill this into more minds where it just becomes the norm?
Yeah. Yeah, and these are extraordinary times because of the technology we have. It's amazing. It is awesome, but it also has its potholes. When I was going to school, maybe you too, Michael, and a lot of your listeners, you got bullied from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. That was it. Now you're getting bullied 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through social media, and it's all anonymous, or at least hidden behind the technology, and you can bully somebody across the country, across the world. You don't have to leave your house anymore. I don't know how to help a teenager, a 20-year-old through that. I don't understand it. The extraordinary stress and hurt and pain somebody's go through. I mean, they had to do the lockdown. I mean, when we're recording this, that was about 5 years ago. I don't know. I mean, to have had to have that experience. Luckily, my son was out of high school at that point. I don't know what kind of issues that caused. I would suggest that every young person maybe start creating their own toolbox full of tools. I know it's hard to, I rarely, I do, I rarely work with teenagers or 20-year-olds. I actually worked with a 20-year-old a couple of days ago. And I told her at the end, I mean, you're one of the few who have the courage, the bravery, the insight to look for help and ask for help, and literally and extraordinarily doing something as different as hypnotherapy. And I told her, this is your superpower. You have control. You are now a rare person here. I'm living in the state of Arizona, but you're a rare person. There's so few 20-year-olds who know what you know now, and how to control your nervous system, how to reset yourself and reboot the system, if you will. So in terms of people younger, hopefully they are in an environment where it's safe to ask for help. I didn't feel that growing up, not with my parents, not with my school. And so you shut down a bit. But I think you just get to that point where, unfortunately, you're in so much pain, you're in so much hurt that you have to find some way out. And hopefully that's a more resourceful way. Talk therapy, seeing a counselor, going to a coach, doing hypnotherapy, EDMR, breath work, whatever the modality is. There's a lot of great ones out there. How to reach them? My thinking is just like social media. Can we make a lot of TikTok videos about this? More and more podcasts. How can we get the influencers involved in helping people with their emotional health and their mental health, to at least maybe talk about it a little bit? It's back in the day, you put an ad in the newspaper, you put an ad in the phone book. What you had to do to reach people? Maybe a billboard. Nowadays, I don't, it's so difficult to reach because there is so much out there that people can get absorbed into during their day, let alone all the social medias, let alone the video games. And of course, you can chat to each other in video games. And how do you reach somebody, and how do you let them know that there's not only a way out, but that maybe they are struggling? Maybe they don't even know they're struggling. Again, that took me a while to figure that out, that this wasn't the way it was supposed to be. So in terms of helping people, kids are great at this work. Whether you're a little kid, I've helped kids who are 8, 9 years old do this work. Teenagers are great, early 20s, all the way up to your 70s and 80s. Anybody can do this work. It's just a matter of, how do you reach out to somebody if they don't know they need help? And there's so much distraction now in the world. It gets a little frustrating. So other than, doing as much social media as possible to try and reach as many people as possible. And, and that's why I do podcasts, as many as I can. I just started working with somebody because my social media is so, not the greatest. I started working with somebody to help me out with it, to reach more people, and do podcast interviews, as many as I can, to reach out to people. And, whether you work with me or not, or do hypnotherapy or not, but do something, so you need to take control back, and you're allowed to do that. So whether it's whatever modality works best for you to do the healing work, then again, like we were talking about a little bit ago, that part 2 is, what are you going to practice? You want joy, you want happiness, you want confidence, you want strength, empowerment. You want to stand in the power of your own strength. You want to, more, ability to use your willpower to achieve your goals. You can have it. Yeah, but it does take some practice. You can have the body you want. But yeah, it takes some effort and work. Dalai Lama still meditates every day. There's a reason he does it, because he knows it informs his mind, informs his body, his emotions, his spirit. If you get a black belt in Taekwondo or Judo or whatever, you're going to have a big ceremony. You're going to have a big celebration. You have a big party. The next day, you're back in the dojo practicing Taekwondo. So there's a relentlessness to this work. And maybe because there's so much instant gratification, nobody can sit for long form movies anymore, it seems like, because, Instagram's 3 minutes, TikTok's 8 or 9 minutes or something. And so attention spans don't seem to be as long as they used to be. I think that was a non-answer to a very important question, but I'm not really sure.
Well, this is a conversation. It's not so much me just asking questions and then hoping you give us the answer that's going to change everyone's lives today. I know that's not going to be the reality for many people, because You said something early on, saying, like, I didn't know better. And we don't know better oftentimes. When you're young, you don't know about finances unless you're taught about it. You don't know about love unless you were able to grow up in a household with love. And then you know what is good and positive love, not these toxic relationships. So, like, for example, the dating scene, right? You can go on Tinder, Bumble, any of these dating apps, right? And you can just keep on swiping, right? I don't like this. I don't like this. And you're only going by the image typically, unless you see an image, you're like, okay, let me go down a little bit, go down to the description. Let me learn about this person. But oftentimes it's that initial spark, right? And when we look at just what the mind is naturally attracted to, it's attracted to distractions more than deep, meaningful conversations. And personal development is one of those things where you have to have a taste for it. You have to want it, like, truly, because if you give someone an option to be entertained or to develop themselves, they're going to choose entertainment 9 times out of 10, right? Because they're going to pick up their phone, they're going to go to TikTok, they're going to go to YouTube or something, and they're going to watch something that's interesting to them. It might be a dream of theirs. Maybe they are watching, the Cooking Network or something, right? They want to learn how to cook or something like that. It could be a form of personal development. But then do you apply those skills in the kitchen, or do you just keep on watching cooking shows? Some people are just in that constant cycle of preparing and not taking action. And when we are in that cycle of learning, it's a great thing. I remember there was a person who just kind of kept going to school and getting all of these degrees, and eventually they passed away. They never worked a lick in their life, but they have all of these degrees, right? And that was the learning, right? But where was the service part? Where was the help part? And when we look at, like, what is life, life can be many different things, right? And I think when you're younger, you don't necessarily see life for what it truly is, fleeting, right? Because you have more years in front of you than you do behind you, versus the person who might be 45 having the midlife crisis, realizing that they might have just went over that edge. And they're like, oh, I need to start to pay attention. Because it's not until something is broken do people start to pay attention. They get a doctor's note, they get something, course papers, it could be anything that says, let me start to focus now. And so, like, when we are a photographer or something, this is a good example. Let's say you are getting married and you hire a photographer for your wedding. Do you want those pictures to be in focus or out of focus, right? If you imagine getting all your wedding pictures and they're all out of focus, how livid would you be? I couldn't imagine what the bride would say or do, or the groom would just be so upset, right? You have all these pictures that are out of focus, and guess what? That is how people are living life right now. Out of focus. You're not focusing the lens. You're not focusing on what you should be doing or what truly matters, right? Because yeah, we might not know better, but we can learn to know better. We can say, let's pay attention to what's working and what is not working. Because we can wake up every single day, go to a 9 to 5, we can make a living, right? But what about making a life? What do you want to be remembered for when everything is said and done? Do you want to just be the person who worked 45 years for a company that's going to replace you as soon as you retire? Or do you want to build something that's going to be long lasting? And most people, they want to have that long lasting type of, idea for their life, but not everyone's willing to endeavor on it. They're not willing to put in the actions. They might have the the willingness, kind of like how New Year's resolutions come and go, right? The motivation is always fleeting. And you brought up so many good points about the consistency in the discipline aspect. You're not going to go see a trainer one time and all of a sudden you're in shape, and or you work on your diet and then all of a sudden you can just eat whatever you want, right? It's that constant habitual habit of, let me be better than I was the day before. And I just think of, now we're at this, intersection of people can supplement things that are not right in their life. They don't like the way they look. They put on some makeup. They are a little overweight. They get Ozempic. They go for a surgery. There's even guys who are not tall enough and they're getting surgery for, on their legs to be taller, right? So people are supplementing with, technology, I guess, but they're not looking at, something that's going to create a deep and meaningful impact. And I like to say this: Like, let's say you're hungry for something, and maybe you're hungry for pasta, right? Like you want some, like some chicken Alfredo or something. But I'm going to give you everything but chicken Alfredo. I'm going to give you some salmon. I'm going to give you some spinach. I'm going to give you maybe like a turkey sandwich or something along those lines. And you still won't be satiated because what you desire is that pasta. I think of the story as a guy who he was stranded on a desert island. It was like a shipwreck or something, right? And he was eating fish, right? He was eating fish, and all of a sudden he started to get a craving for fish eyes. And fish eyes are rich in nutrients of B vitamins, and his body needed that. But he didn't know he needed that. His body just naturally knew, very similar to the subconscious mind. It's like 95%. Like, hey, it knows things that you might not know or that you're paying attention to. So sometimes we reach a tipping point and we say, well, like this is what I need, right? Like I'm going to stop everything. So now instead of just eating the fish and throwing away the fish eyes, you are going to eat the fish eyes because it's what you're craving. Very similar to now you're going to get rid of the pizzas. You're going to get rid of the turkey sandwiches. You're going to get rid of the salmon. You're going to get the chicken Alfredo that you want. So it's a bit of focus now. We're saying, let's focus on this. And so my final question is how can hypnotherapy help someone focus on what they truly need and truly want?
By tapping into the subconscious mind, the great example of the body knowing needed the fish eyes for the B vitamins. Well, that's coming from the intuition, which is directly speaking from the subconscious mind. Intuition is amazing. If you can develop that aspect of you by honing into and listening to and empowering your intuition, it's really your subconscious mind speaking to you. Even if you don't know what it is you're looking for, even if you aren't sure what the hurt and pain is, that's your conscious mind trying to analyze, trying to be logical about the situation. But all that is held within that emotionalized part of mind that is running basically on computer code. It doesn't matter, how much you want to fix it with your conscious mind. It's really the subconscious mind that's in charge of that healing. And you can access it really safely, really gently, pretty quickly. But it's that idea that, let's say if you're, writing computer code for an accounting program for your business, you put in there 2 + 2 = 5. Well, it doesn't matter how much you type on your keyboard or slam your keyboard with your fist out of frustration and anger, or go to your friends and vent over a glass of wine or a beer to like how unfair it is that it keeps coming up with 5. Or you could take a marker, take a Sharpie and write on your computer screen 2 + 2 = 4. Nothing's going to fix the issue until you go into that computer code, look through those lines of code. It's like, oh, okay, there it is. Even do a search, 2 + 2 = 5. Well, there it is. And then you amend it, you edit it, you change it, you press save, write in 2 + 2 = 4, press save, and now all your equations equal out. And it can be that simple. It can be, we grip onto a pin very tightly with our fist. And after a while, it becomes very familiar to us. And then it's so familiar, it becomes comfortable. It's comfortably miserable because we're so tightly holding on to this pin. But it's familiar and it's comfortable. And after a while, we think that this is who we are. It's like, just drop the pin. You don't need to know how a pin is made. You don't need to know what color ink this pin is. You don't need to know what ink is in terms of a chemistry aspect. Just drop the pin. And then what do you want instead of the pin? Well, I want joy. I want happiness. Okay, now let's practice some joy and happiness. And again, I don't want to say everything's like a simple one and done, snappy, wavy my hand and everybody's healed. But you know what the problem is. Even if you can't specifically pinpoint it out loud with your conscious mind, but you know what the problem is because you're reacting to life in a certain way. You're being triggered by certain things, which may create an automatic response of anxiety or fear or anger. So you know why you're doing it within the subconscious mind, because it doesn't happen when you're watching TV, when you're hanging out with your friends, when you're mowing the lawn. It's only happening in certain situations, maybe at work, maybe with certain family situations. Your subconscious mind knows when to do it, when to get triggered, when to try to protect you. So it knows why it's doing it. You know why it's going on. Yeah, it's behind that veil. But more importantly, you know what to do about it. Maybe it's as simple as dropping the pen. Maybe there's some more deeper healing work that needs to go to resolve it, to heal the child. You're allowed to do that. You have the right, you have the power, you have the ability to do it because it's your subconscious mind. You know how powerful that is. It's running your heart. It's breathing your lungs. It's splitting your cells. It grew you from a one-day-old baby to an adult. Your subconscious mind is extraordinary. And so why not use that to help you further your development? And then there's all the other stuff. I mean, you have 600 episodes for a reason, because there's important aspects to developing yourself as a person, as a human, to creating joy and happiness, as well as compassion, empathy, and becoming of service to people. There's a lot to learn around that. It's not just a 3-4 episode little arc that you can make about personal development. It's lifelong, because what I needed when I was 16 was different than what I needed at 26, which was different than I needed at 56. So there's continually learning and developing and growing and understanding more about the brain and the mind and consciousness and even generational hurt and pain and how that affects family, how it affects growing up, how it affects DNA. Really, I mean, there's a whole nother long conversation some other time, but with somebody maybe more skilled about that kind of stuff. But they've done research that showed the children of Holocaust survivors have a marker in their DNA for fear that the children of people who didn't go through the Holocaust do not have. It's going to literally change your genetics, and then what do you do? And so this is a powerful conversation, and one that will probably go on for many, many, many more years, because it's so important to have. And there's so much to learn about consciousness, about healing, about the subconscious mind, let alone the conscious mind. So first off, thank you for doing it, because I know I did a podcast myself some years ago, and it's hard work. People think, oh, wait, you just work 45 minutes a week. That's pretty nice. Yeah, no, it's a lot of work, a lot of prep work, and then a lot of post work. Let alone finding the people you want to talk with and researching and maybe reading their. It's a lot of work. So I appreciate you doing that, and especially for 600 episodes. I mean, that's got to be some going on 8, 9, 10 years. Something you doing this. So that's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably 4 years now.
4 years.
Yeah, it's about 4 years now. We do 3 episodes a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Oh, okay.
And if I did more episodes, I probably wouldn't be able to keep up, right? Because I do other things also. I do have a motivational video series. We do a live thing sometimes on the weekends, but the weekends are just so busy for me with the family and everything. I have work. So it's like, it's here and there on that show, which I knew was always going to be like that, because, like I'm already at capacity with the podcast and then the motivational video series. That's basically like the mandatory stuff. And then the blogs come out every Sunday. That's like the mandatory stuff. Everything else is kind of, extra to kind of help someone if they need that boost. But the reality is, America especially is not built on personal development. They're built on entertainment. We can look at other countries like China, Japan, like the Asian countries. They're built on personal development and like enhancing themselves. Like if we look at the schooling, for example, compared to other parts of the world, America spends the most per student, but yet we have some of the lowest test scores. And you have to ask yourself, why is this happening? It's not because we don't know how to allocate money. It's not that we don't know how to educate our youth. It's just that the mindsets for many children are built on entertainment, not on personal development here in America. Now, this doesn't have to be a constant. This could be switched very easily, but the consumer market won't allow it, right? Because they make money on brokenness, right? They make money on giving, a 7-year-old some antidepressant drugs and things like that. It's a money thing. And I'm here to say that, you can, choose broken, or you can choose to be repaired, right? You get the tools and you do the work. But, very similar to that 20-year-old girl that you worked with, she knows things that all her peers will not, unless they say, I want to know what you know, and I want to go down the same process and the path. And the path is, looking at that subconscious, looking at, where you're going, what went right, what went wrong, seeking mentors, seeking help, seeking guidance, and maybe, relinquishing the ego a bit sooner, and saying, okay, I'm young, right? I know when I was 18, I thought I knew everything. And, when I was like 21 to 23, I started to realize maybe I don't know everything. And I started to get mentors and I started to seek guidance. And from there, my life started to uh, in the best way possible, where I started to look at how can I start to make things better. And by 28, had the business, personal development, things along those lines. So it took about 5 years. It was about a 5 year span for me to go from that, knowing everything to thinking I don't know everything to me saying, okay, let me just be, like a forever student. Even though I knew from cooperating teachers and, great professors in college, sometimes you just have to kind of have that life experience. And this is a journey for all of us. Some of us are going to have a very nice path. It's going to be pleasant. Some of us are going to have some journeys that we might not have wished we have walked. But regardless of our journey, the good and the bad, that's part of life. But if something is truly not favorable for you, it is hopefully a wake-up call for you to make some changes. And so as we begin to wrap up, Craig, where's the best place someone can reach you, find you if they wanted to start working with you? And then once you're all done with that, can you leave us with a takeaway that people can walk away with from this episode that's going to be helpful and enlightening in their day?
Yeah, absolutely. I run Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, but like I mentioned before, most of my sessions are done with people around the country, around the world because of Zoom, and research showing Zoom sessions work as well as in person. So whether you're doing talk therapy, you're doing hypnotherapy or some other form of other modality or doctor's appointment or coaching or relationship counseling, Zoom sessions work as well as, and some research even showed work better than in person because people feel relaxed and comfortable in their homes. And so Arizona Integrated Hypnotherapy, if you just Google search Flagstaff hypnosis, I'll show up. You'll see me there. And again, I work with people around the world, just not to flex or to brag, but just to show you the power of this. I've been working with a basketball player in Iceland. He's American, but he got picked up by the European League. He's in Iceland, and he got my name from somebody I was working with in Puerto Rico, his friend. And so it's not just a down the street kind of therapy anymore. You can be anywhere and get the help because, again, I'm not fixing anybody. You're going to fix yourself. So the power is within you. In terms of social media, you can find me all there. But basically, the best idea is just to go to the website, Arizona Integrated Hypnotherapy. Find me on Google and email me. And I'm happy to talk with you, do a consultation call, and talk more about this. But in terms of leaving you all with something, what I like to, again, and we already talked about it, but I think it's so important to maybe go over one more time. What you practice, you get better at. And so if you just take a minute, it's like, well, what are you practicing? Are you practicing anxiety? Are you practicing anger? Are you practicing being depressed? And yeah, those are serious, serious issues. So it's time to turn it around. It's time to get help if you need it. Or if this is something maybe you can work on your own. Certainly there's a lot of exercises and techniques you can use to retrain your nervous system to be less stressed, to be more calm and peaceful. But it's that relentlessness. You can have all the joy, the happiness, the peace you want, but it does come with work and practice. The Dalai Lama still meditates every day. And the reason why is because he wants that to be his essence, that loving kindness, that compassion. And it's hard work in this world of ours. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you taking some time, and congratulations on all these shows you've done. It's a powerful thing you're doing. So I appreciate
Perfect.
you inviting me to be a part of it.
Thank you. And thank you for spending some time, of course. All your links, so your website, I will throw your socials down there also so people can follow you if they want. But I think the best way for people to reach out would just be to sign up for a consultation. Jump right in, right? There's two types of people, right? There's people who go down the steps in the pool and people who do a cannonball into the deep end. I want you to be those people who just do that cannonball in the deep end because it might be like, ooh, like that quick burst of like, this is cold, but then after you acclimate so much better than rather than just going down the stairs. It's like a slow suffering. And, life doesn't have to be full of suffering, right? So just dive right into life and, look at how you can progress. Because if you feel like it's as if things are stagnant or things are not going your way, begin to look at your subconscious mind. And I know hypnotherapy is going to be a great tool for many of the listeners and viewers of the podcast. So, Craig, I do want to thank you once again for coming on, spending some time, and of course, talking about your work today.
Thanks, Michael.